Welcome to the Lou Blakely Show. You're in the right place if you're a service provider who is ready to transition into a more freedom-based business model with digital products. In this podcast, I share with you a unique combination of launch strategy, energetics, and mindset to create true, long-lasting success. It's time to ditch the burnout for good, create the business that you truly want, and share it with the world. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to this week's episode on the Lou Blakely Show. This is episode 16, and today I'm going to be talking about creating an aligned launch strategy and what actually needs to go inside your amazing strategy that you are going to craft specifically for you, that is going to actually give you the results that you need. So I'm going to be covering what an aligned strategy actually is, as opposed to just any old strategy, the things that your launch strategy needs to include, and how to create your own launch strategy. Okay, so what is an aligned launch strategy and why is it important? So aligned, obviously, it needs to be in alignment with you, so it's a key word. It's very important that your launch strategy is actually designed for you and not for someone else. Like, there's so many blueprints and roadmaps and all of that, which is all well and good, but they need to have room for your own preferences and individuality. And if they don't, and you're just copying someone else's strategy word for word, then I feel like it could fall flat for you because it's not going to be in alignment for you, and it could also fall flat for the people that you are showing up for, that you want to attract into your business. So that's where alignment comes in. Like, it really needs to feel good to you. And that does not mean that there's not going to be hard work involved. There is going to be work involved, but we can also do work that feels really rewarding and like it's in alignment for us. And even hard work can actually feel flowy. I know that when I'm in my focus zone and I am doing the work that actually matters to me and actually feels good, and I know there's a purpose behind it, it can actually feel really flowy. I think there's this idea sometimes that flowy and alignment is like not working hard, but yeah, I don't think that's really accurate. I know for me personally, when I am achieving stuff and I'm moving forward in the right direction, that is the right direction for me and not someone else's strategy or way of doing things, that is when I get into that flow state. Okay, so I've already had one tangent today. Let's see where we go. So I do believe that when it comes to like talking about alignment and that kind of thing, that sometimes that gets misinterpreted as not actually having a strategy. Like, if we're going to be in a flow-based state with our launches, that means no strategy. But that actually couldn't be further from the truth, because quite often when we don't have a strategy is when we really start to just try and adopt other people's way of doing things. But what I see a lot of is basically the kind of mindset of, let's just whip up an offer, put it out there, announce it, and expect the sales to start pouring in. I mean, wouldn't it be great if that happened? I wish that happened, but that's not the way that it is. And there's actually a reason that this doesn't work. And the reason is that there's nothing really attracting your people to you to compel them to decide that this program is worth their time and money. It's kind of like a billboard, like putting an ad on a billboard and expecting people to buy your thing. Billboards, from a branding perspective, are part of a much wider campaign. They're just like one little point along the way. But sometimes we can approach like our launches like this too. We can treat them, we're just going to invite people to join our thing and expect people to sign up. That is not how it works. It needs to be part of a series of steps. So those steps kind of create our strategy, and we've got to have a strategy, and that strategy actually creates an experience for the people that we're wanting to attract. So the good news is that there's actually many ways that you can launch a program or a course. There are so many ways. Like, there's so many different parts of the launch that we can really tailor to what we enjoy the most ourselves. And if we enjoy it, then other people are going to enjoy it too. So instead of feeling like you're boxed in, you actually have a huge amount of choice when it comes to your launch strategy, as long as you have certain needle movers in place. And I'm going to be covering that soon. You also do get to decide if it's going to feel good. So this is important, really, really important. So don't forget this. And as I said before, of course, there's going to be work involved, but it gets to be work that is going to excite you, even if it feels like it's hard. As I said before, I don't think, there's a connotation almost that flow and alignment comes from everything being easy. But sometimes, as I said, I feel like I'm really in flow when I'm actually getting stuff done and I'm moving forward on the things that actually matter, and the strategy is the one that I've chosen for myself. Okay, so we actually get to decide if it's going to feel good or not. We can make it feel like it's so difficult and we hate every minute of it, but that's no real way to live. We get to make the decision that it's going to feel good, wise. And on a side note, ever since I've learned my human design, I'm at a stage now where I am have quite an extensive knowledge of my human design, and I have to say it all made sense. And one of those things specifically is that I see a lot of people teaching having a long pre-launch runway, and that is something that I don't teach my clients because I don't believe that many of us are built for that. And I also, if you're just on your first or second launch, then really more often than not, it will stop you from launching mindset-wise than the success it can give you on the other end. Sure, it is a more advanced strategy, but I do not believe as a first-time or second-time launcher that you should be focusing on a 3-4 month launch runway before you're allowed to launch. I actually do not believe that at all. I think it will do more harm than good. And personally, from my perspective, I know I'd just get bored. I'm a manifesting generator. I got lots of different things going on, and I'm more suited to actually offering. I could even have multiple offers launching at once. That's the way I'm designed. So having that pre-launch runway of a really extended period of time. So what I mean by a runway is that you only talk about the specific thing on your socials and in emails for maybe 3 months before you even have your pre-launch event. So to me, I just it makes me go yuck, that's not for me. So just because I think that's a really good example of something that kind of what I'm talking about here, we get to create our own strategy. Just because it works for some people and they can even swear by it doesn't mean that it's even possible for others, and can only hold them back when they live by these so-called rules that they get told you must do it this way, you must do it that way. Because I know for me, if I had to do a 3-month pre-launch strategy, a pre-launch runway, and I was only allowed to talk about one thing for 3 months before I was allowed to launch, there are no such rules. We can chuck that stuff out, because I know I would have left the building a long time ago. So, and that's just one example really of something not being aligned for me. So I've decided, well, that's not in my rule book, and it doesn't have to be in yours either. And there's going to be other examples. So maybe the thought of doing a masterclass makes your skin crawl, but you really love maybe doing a challenge, or maybe you don't have the capacity to show up live, you're busy all day with your kids or whatever. So you can design a challenge that's completely hands off for you. There's just so many different ways that you get to launch. So it's really important that you actually choose what works for you in terms of the logistics. Like I said, if you're busy all day, maybe you've got a job that you're at all day, like a 9 to 5, then you're not going to be able to go live every day at midday for your launch. So you really have to cater it for you around what's going on in your life, but also your personality. Like I talked about before, there is no way I can just be so focused on one topic for that long. Doesn't work with my brain. There's so many different ways you can launch, and hopefully that you really understand that from this first section of this podcast. There are so many different ways we can do it, so let's do it a way that works really well for you. And that's a great segue into the next part of the podcast, where I'm going to talk about basically what your successful launch strategy does need to include. So we definitely need a launch strategy, and it needs to include those specific needle movers that I spoke about before, but yet they still get to be done in your way. So let's dive into that. So there's some key things that you do need to have in a launch. You've got the flexibility, though, to make them work for you. So creating your strategy is really about knowing what needs to be in there and then choosing the right option for you. And that really is all it is. So what does need to be in there? So first of all, obviously, you need to have a course that you really love and it lights you up. You know that it helps people. It solves a problem for people. You know that people have this problem, and you know that it gets them the transformation or outcome that you want to deliver. So that's the first one. Secondly, you need an offer that feels really good to you while also delivering some amazing value and is a hell yes for your customer. So it's a no-brainer. They just are reading your sales page going, oh my God, like this is exactly what I need. This person gets me. And it has the right kind of levers that we can add in there to make it that kind of no-brainer offer. So what's the difference between an offer and a course? I'm going to actually be doing a podcast episode about this soon. But basically your course is like the 6 core modules, like the step-by-step training, whereas the offer is how you present it to the public. So that is, what bonuses do you have? What's your guarantee? Do you have a guarantee? How long is it available for? That kind of thing. Okay, and there's lots of different parts of an offer. So stay tuned if you want to hear more about how to create an amazing offer. So the third part of a launch strategy that you need is a plan around how you're going to attract an audience if you're at that beginner stage. Maybe you already have an audience though and you don't really need to attract more people. So then it becomes an engagement strategy. So how are you either going to attract an audience and engage them or engage them between now and your launch? So this doesn't mean months and months, as I find this really holds people back actually of having to do this for like maybe 3 months before you're allowed to launch. But I'm talking about what you can start doing today and do that until your launch event. So even if you want to launch in like 3 weeks, we can create a plan to start engaging people right now. Your launch runway does not need to be months and months long. I feel like I'm going on about that a little bit today, but not really the point of the podcast, but I think it's a really good representation of something that I don't feel aligned with, so I don't do it. And it gets to be an easy decision as that. So the next thing that your strategy needs is like a launch event and what that particular launch event is going to be. So this is your masterclass or webinar, depending on what words you like to call it, your challenge, and that could be a free or paid challenge. Same with the masterclass, really. That could be free or paid. Or you can also do an email only way of launching, but this still has to be an event, but done by email. This type of launching method, a pre-launch method, is amazing. I really love it. Caveat, you do need an email list and it needs to be growing for this to work for you. I've actually had quite a lot of success with this method with my customers, clients. So it is in a really aligned way to launch if you're continuously growing your email list and you have an engaged email list. So to sum that one up, you need a launch event of some kind that's going to attract people to you. And even just running one of these launch events is a really big way of kind of becoming known as an expert as well, which is a great side effect of that. Definitely needs to be in your strategy in some way, shape, or form. Now, the next thing that your launch strategy needs to include is what the content of your launch event is going to include and how it's going to move the people who show up for your either free or low cost event. How are you going to move them from where they are now towards your product? And what information are you actually going to include in this webinar, masterclass, challenge, whatever it is, This is usually quite a big sticking point for people, and I dive deep with my clients on this stuff. So we really craft exactly what you're going to give away or cover in this free event and what's inside the product. I think there's a very key distinction there. And that is something that needs to be part of your strategy. Like, how are you going to actually use your launch event to create demand for your product while also creating a great experience for your people? That really is what that comes down to. So another thing that you need to include in your strategy is how you're actually going to present your offer at the end of this pre-launch event, and how you're going to keep your community engaged after the pre-launch event while your doors are open to your course or program. So how are you going to actually show up and engage with people during that time? How are you going to help people who are interested in the product? How are you going to speak to people? How are you going to help facilitate those people who are considering your product but are not quite sure? Like, we need to build that into your strategy. And then lastly, you need to have a plan in place around how you're actually going to assess if your launch was a success or not. So what does that success look like to you? What numbers do you need to review? And how can you make it even better next time? So I actually have written quite a lengthy blog post on this topic of doing a launch debrief. So I'm going to add that to the show notes and you can check that out. But and to find that, you just need to go to louiseblakely.com/16. But I think that's a part that we quite often forget to do. Like, sometimes we emotionally wrap up our launches, whether they felt good or bad, whether we got the results we wanted or we didn't. But actually, that's the point of the launch, where you really, really, really need to look at your numbers and your data and get familiar with what actually happened in your launch, because the numbers are what really tell us the truth, rather than that kind of gut feel, good or bad, yes or no, I'm going to quit kind of vibe, which we don't want. So if you want long-term success with launching, then doing a solid launch debrief definitely needs to be done. And yeah, if you're wondering about that, go and check out that blog post. But it's good to just go into your launch knowing what good looks like and actually having an educated goal in terms of what is achievable for you. And then actually, how do you know at the end of the launch whether it was good or bad? So having that as part of your strategy is really important, because that means that you can go into your next launch so much more educated and informed about what can be done better next time. Okay. So there's quite a lot there. These are all key parts of your strategy. So now I want to talk about how you can actually create your own strategy. So as long as you've got something in place for those specific parts of your launch that I've just covered, then you're actually good. So it's time to stop overcomplicating it and choose what really feels good for you and is going to connect with the people you want to help. One thing that I really find a lot in the online marketing space is that there's kind of like the way to do things. There's no flexibility almost in a lot of and I think this is changing, which is really, really good. I can definitely see this changing. But one thing that I'm really passionate about is letting you know that you can actually choose your own path as long as you cover the key factors or key parts of a launch that have to happen in order for it to attract the results or get the results that you're looking for. You do get to choose, okay, I'm going to do that type of launch event because it feels good for me, and my customer will probably love it too. So like, what our customer wants and enjoys so often leads the way. And one thing I'm super passionate about is you get to also choose something that feels good for you. So where is that sweet spot? Where can you find something that feels amazing for you? Like, maybe you like to show up and speak, so you can do a challenge or a masterclass. Maybe you love heaps of interaction with people and you want to build relationships. In that case, I think a challenge is better than a webinar or a masterclass. So where can it feel good for you, but also something that your ideal customer will really enjoy as well? Like, if you can get it so that you love it, you love showing up, there's energy there, and they also love showing up because it's perfect for them, then you're onto a winner. So there's so much room for movement. So let's just stop thinking that we're boxed in with a strategy, because we're not. The strategy is actually what gives us the flow that we're looking for, the feeling of ease and alignment that we need. Okay, so we have choices. You can craft something that will really light you up and also really help people that come along on your journey for you. So designing your strategy to suit you is imperative. So you could just go through those points that I covered here and literally create your own strategy that is designed for your unique strengths and enjoyment factor as well. And if you need help with creating your own unique launch strategy that is completely personalized to you and where you're at right now, then check out my VIP launch days. So it's me and you for a full day where I help you design your personalized launch strategy. You will leave with it all done, ready to go, and you'll know exactly what you need to do step by step. So if you're interested in that, just head over to louiseblakely.com/VIP to find out more. So my goal with this episode was to help you realize that, or release some of that pressure to follow a strategy that just feels gross to you. Like I talked about that 3-month-long launch runway thing. That to me, I just don't like it. I just could never pull that off. No matter how hard I would try, it would feel like I was in push and hustle mode, and I don't want to be there. It would make me not enjoy my business at all. So let's not do things like that, but also understand that you still do need a strategy, and it's actually the strategy that will not only give you the results, but the feeling of ease, flow, and alignment that you're looking for. So I'd love to work with you to create an epic strategy just for you, and I hope this episode made you realize that it really gets to be done your way. Thanks for listening today, and I hope to catch you next time. Thanks, course creators and go-getters. You're incredible, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe in your podcast app so you don't miss an episode. If you'd like to find out more about what I offer, head across to loublakely.com. See you next time.